Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of Modern Mondays. Uh, this is episode I think 11, and if you're watching this is probably gonna be uploaded on a Tuesday or Wednesday. And yeah, let's kind of jump into it. So first thing, let's go ahead and talk about what I've been doing since I haven't really been uploading too much Magic content, and I do want to apologize to my viewers who are subscribed for that sort of content. Um, Namely, I've just been sort of busy with life stuff, so I haven't really gotten around to going out and playing Modern on a weekly basis. I'm actually been playing a little bit more Yu-Gi-Oh lately, as you can kind of see some of my content's been shifting a little bit towards a little bit more Yu-Gi-Oh related, but not that much more. Haven't really gotten time to really go out and play both games as much. So that was just kind of one factor that has sort of stopped me from uploading too much content for Magic. Another thing is the locals I went to. I grinded really hard at that locals, so much so that I ended up just buying all of the cards I wanted from there. And so they didn't really have anything left that I really wanted. So I kind of it sort of killed my motivation of going out and playing. But yeah, that's just another factor there. And honestly, Modern's been kind of stale lately. This is just kind of the same decks over and over that I've been playing against. And I wish we had a little bit of a shake-up, a ban list, or something like that. We do have the new Lord of the Rings set that's coming out. Granted, a lot of those cards look like they're made for Commander. Maybe a handful of them are Modern playable. I don't really expect that to really shake up Modern all that much, which is fine. I think Modern's a pretty stable, a very stable state right now. It's very um, you got your established top decks and your established strategies, and while it's good that it's not a single strategy is dominating another, it just gets kind of boring when we're playing against the same like 4 or 5 decks every single time when I go out and play. So I just was like, all right, I want to change it up, take a break. And yeah, so I took a bit of a break, sort of coming back into it now. But we'll have to see about that. I don't really get bored of playing my own deck. I just get bored of playing the same deck. Uh, playing against the same matchup all the time. But that's just me. Anywho, so those are just a couple of factors as to why I haven't really been uploading as much. And um, yeah, I think that's really it. But coming back this particular week, there's a few small changes with the release of Aftermath. I think one deck particularly got a huge boost, which was interesting to see in action. And I'm talking about Elementals. Because before that, Elementals was kind of like a 50-50 matchup for me. Um, when they were using Urian, it was a tougher matchup because you had to play against the Urian loop or the Urian line of play. So that's sort of like, as a control player, it's hard to beat that in the long run because you have no way of closing out the games or to really apply pressure. You're just sitting there trying to answer all their cards, and eventually they get value, and you kind of lose your edge there. Um, there are other times where you can answer all their stuff and they can't really do anything. Then when you're in a ban, that's when the matchup got a little bit easier. But now with the release of a couple of new cards and the direction that their decks has been taken, it's made for a pretty, I guess, hard matchup again. And so um, yeah, I'll talk about that a little bit later in the video because I did play against a new version of Elementals, and I think I could have done better, but you know, I think I misplayed a few times, which caused me to lose the game. But yeah, and I guess the other thing is I was tired of playing against creativity. That was just always a deck that I just don't like playing against. While it's easy to, you know, it's an easy deck to read. Like you always know what they're up to, but it's always an annoying deck to kind of answer. And that's the same thing with elementals. It's like it's an easy deck to know what they're doing, their lines of play. But both those decks have the same sort of play pattern, which makes the game sort of stale and boring. And I'll like when I talk about more about the elementals, I'll explain my thoughts on it and um, why I just haven't really been enjoying it too much. Uh, but when I play against other decks, I don't really have that issue. But it's just namely against creativity and elementals. It's just that sort of same. It's just a grindy control match, right? Or a grindy combo match, or a grindy like value match. And their card quality is just better. And it's probably because I'm playing control, so that's probably my experience, my negative experience playing against that. But um, yeah, I don't. I'll talk about that in a second here. But yeah, let's talk about my deck first, and then we'll talk about the tournament I went to. It was a really small tournament. I think other players like me have been kind of burnt out of modern a little bit, so we're getting lesser and lesser turnouts for like our modern tourney, where it used to be like double the size, maybe even like triple the size sometimes. Now it's kind of winding down. I feel like a lot of people are sort of getting burnt out with the format, and I don't kind of blame them. If you're not playing the best decks, the best top tier decks with the same like loops, gameplay loops, then yeah, the format gets kind of stale. Anyways, as for the deck, I haven't really gotten to play test too much, so I've only changed out a few cards, and I made this change today. So this after playing yesterday, I made the changes to my decks today just to see how it'll do the next time I go out and play. So let's talk about some of the changes, and we'll go from there. So I did take a look at a couple of deck lists recently, just to see what people were doing with control, because I haven't played in almost 3 months. I want to say. Um, so I wanted to see what is currently popular amongst blue-white control, being Jeskai or Esper or just pure blue-white. And I've noticed like a couple of small things, and I try to sort of integrate that in my deck as a theory too, just to see. And yeah, we'll talk about it. So the first thing is Chalice. So I'm playing one Chalice. So I have the second Chalice in my side deck. Um, so I've seen lists where they play three or one, never two for some reason. Um, and I think with this particular format right now, where Elementals is a very popular deck, I think playing one Chalice is gonna be the way to go. Namely because there are still a lot of decks that are low to the ground, and there's still a lot of Cascade decks and whatnot. But obviously, Chalice is not that great against the Elementals decks, which I think I struggle against more than anything else. Um, Elementals or creativity. So Chalice in those particular situations isn't as good against those particular decks. It's still playable against creativity, not so much against elementals, depending on which version they're playing. So I'm trying out one Chalice in the main and one in the side right now, as some other decks are also doing. So yeah, just the one right here. First of the deck, I'm just going through really quickly. Still playing for prismatic ending. You can play 3 if you like. 1 dam, 2 dress downs. Maybe this card needs to be upped. I'm not too sure, or up in the side deck at least. Really good against elementals and Archon of Cruelty and things like that. And then 2 snaps. Still worked out pretty well for me. And for counter spells, 3 fairies. I tried cutting the fairy to 2, and I sort of missed it, so I just bumped up to 3 again. So playing just 3 fairies. This is a heavy planeswalker build, so if you're not playing that many planeswalkers, you could probably cut down the fairy to like 2 or so. 1 Shadow Prophecy. When I do see it, it's good. When I don't, but most of the time I don't see this card, so it's whatever. It's just an additional draw card. And since we're playing the domain build, might as well give us some digging options. 4 Archmage Charms, 1 Verdict. So this is another change I made. I'm playing 2 sweepers now again. So 1 sweeper and 1 Verdict and 1 Dam. And the reason why I'm doing this is because against elementals there were just like a lot of cards on the board. They had a lot of Risen Reefs. They had a lot of Nissas, and I was finding myself falling behind on the board trying to answer their 1-for-1s. So I had a lot of Leyline Bindings, but Leyline Bindings is not that great against them because if they will sage you your Leyline Bindings, then they get their creatures back, and that triggers on entering the battlefield, and so I decided to just go ahead and try out 2 verdicts or 2 sweepers in the main, 1 Dam, 1 Verdict. Verdicts is for when you don't really need it and you just need it to pitch for elementals. That's why you play the Verdict. And Dam is just when you have an established board and you just want to kill one thing, then you can just Dam one thing. And that does come up a few times, the double black. Sometimes you don't want to overload, you just want to hit one creature, and that's why I'm doing one of one. And then the rest of the Planeswalker package, I did find I did like to Wandering Emperors again. She helped me quite a few times in a lot of the games where I just needed to apply pressure or need to establish a threat on the board without tapping out. And so yeah, the Emperor has been kind of nice and has helped me. Just 2 though. I don't think I would play 3 or minimum 1 for sure. I definitely like her at 1. And then Big Teferi you can probably cut to 1, and then you can probably cut the Jace depending on your build. I just like having all of them in there. Obviously, this build is very, very heavy Planeswalker compared to like a normal blue-white control deck. And then for the rest of my removal suite, the 4 Bindings and 3 Solitudes. Yeah, this has worked out pretty well. Not really much to say about that. Alright, as for the lands, I did change the lands a little bit. I added 1 additional land. And that's just 1 additional fetch lands, just to make sure I get my domain up as quickly as possible. So I have the 4 Flooded, 4 Polluted, and then 1 Mist and 1 Scarring Tarn. It can be any combination that you want. I do recommend between 8 to 11 fetches. So I'm running 10 fetches here. I think that's plenty good. You definitely want 4 Flooded, and then the rest of this can be anything. I'd recommend grabbing any fetches that can grab blue, because blue is going to be your main way of getting islands and whatnot. Some people do play the Orzhov or the other or another fetch that can get white. So they'll have like 5 lands, 5 fetches that can grab a plains just in case they run into Blood Moon or something like that. I haven't had too many issues against dealing with Blood Moon, so if you're playing against a deck that you suspect can play Blood Moon, you can easily fetch accordingly and not get punished. So Blood Moon hasn't been huge issues, but yeah, those are some options you can play there. And then I am on the triple trinomes, trying to get domain as quickly and as consistently as I can. So triple trinomes, you got the Esper, I forgot what this is called, and then you got the Bant, I believe, Bant, Esper, and I'm trying to think of it. Damn, can't remember at the moment. But yeah, and then I got my 5 shocks. I'm a little heavy on shocks for sure, but I want to make sure I get all the colors that I need as consistently as possible. So I'm willing to play the 5 shocks, but you can play 4 shocks if anything. Definitely 2 to 3 hollow fountains for sure, and then the rest of the shocks can be whatever colors you want. Yeah, and then 4 basics works out pretty well. And then just the utility lands. Yeah, Stall or Hall won me a game or 2 yesterday, so definitely still like at least 1 man land in the deck. And then Mystic Gates. You could play like Castle Vantress too if you wanted. I've been sort of thinking about that, because with 25 lands you do flood out a bit. So maybe playing Vantress is useful, but Vantress gives you only one blue source. So in a three color deck, 2 to 3 color deck, it might be a little punishing, but it is what it is. So Vantress and or playing um, the Celestial Colonnade might be another good utility land to play. All right, side deck wise, yeah, do additional Chalice here, and then I have one Sanctifier. I was playing two, cut it to one because I think as long as I see one, I think it's good enough. I don't really need two, and she's not that important in the deck. But sometimes against certain decks, if they don't have an answer to her, you kind of just win. So one Sanctifier, two Hollow Moonlights. Maybe you can even bump this up. Like if I had another copy, I'd probably play maybe three Hollow Moonlights. Yeah, pretty good card. Three Aether Gust, another good card. Pseudo's counterspell without countering anything. My main answer to Blood Moon, so I love seeing this card against Blood Moon decks. You just need one blue to answer anything. Nice. Two Vetoes, not much to say about that. Triple Kaya's Guiled, still one of my favorite cards. Really good against aggro decks. Helped me stay alive yesterday. Two Subtleties, and then finally a Farewell. Now this is just a card I'm testing out again, namely because, as I mentioned, there's a lot of value going on right now, and I'm having a hard time dealing with all that value. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna play Farewell and see how this comes out. So what I mean by that is, decks like Creativity and Elementals, they get value just based on the permanence they have in play that generates value over time. Or they just they have like the Fable, Hiki Fable, for example. Fable, the Mirror Breaker. Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Like, that card is just insane value. Turn after turn, chapter after chapter. If you don't answer that, it keeps generating a bunch of things. And then all the treasure tokens also. Farewell can at least get rid of, like, basically all of that. Obviously, it's really expensive. It's 6 mana. But if you do need that, like, saving grace to kind of reset the game so that you can play again, I think one Farewell might be okay. It works well in Pioneer. I just don't know if it works well enough in Modern. Obviously, this is one of those cards I've tried out before. Didn't really care for it. Maybe I'll try it out again, and hopefully it'll be good. Anyways, let's talk about the matchups. So in terms of the matchups, there was 4 rounds yesterday. I went 3-1. So quickly running over it, I played against round 1. I played against Gruul Chatterstorm, which was a new deck I've never seen before. Round 2, I played against let me think. I played against was it either Jeskai or Izzet Fires. And then round 3, I played against Elementals. And in round 4, my opponent just forfeited, gave me the win. And then we just called it a day. So technically I went 3-1. Or I went 3-1, but technically I only played 3 games, so I went technically 2-1, if you think about it that way. Okay, so let's talk about the first deck. The first deck was against Gruul Chatterstorm Storm, I guess, is how you would explain the deck. It's a deck that I've seen being memed sometimes online, but I've never seen the deck in action. And my first taste of it was yesterday, and it was it's pretty cool to see. Like, you look at the cards and you're like, how does this deck work? And okay, so they are like a Rhino deck on crack, I guess. So game 1, my opponent wins the die roll. We went for high roll. We rolled 2 dice. He got a 5. So I was like, okay, I can beat a 5. I ended up getting a 3. So he goes first, but his opening were kind of insane because he goes like Memnite, and then like plays like a spell. Game like turn 2, he like sacks a Memnite with one of his spells. I forget the red spell. But basically, you destroy an artifact and you get 3 goblins. And so he has like 3 attackers, and then by turn 3 he gets like he does it again with like Memnite, another attacker, and then he plays the goblin, the 2/1 goblin. I sorry I don't remember the name of the goblin, but basically when he enters the battlefield, he gives all your creatures +1 attack and haste. And so he's like, oh damn, dude, I like taking 14 damage by turn 3. Like he just swings in all his entire board, and that was like 14 damage right there. I barely had like 2 lands down, so I'm like already behind. And then I play a Teferi, I bounce one of the goblins, and it's like, okay, I could survive one more attack because I had a Solitude and a couple other things in my hand to maybe survive. He drops another goblin that gives it another +1. Is like, okay, I guess I'm dead now. I couldn't deal with all of the stuff he had, so I was dead by like turn 3 or 4. So that was crazy. Like, because he also played Chatterfane. He goes Memnite, Chatterfane, which has Storm, which gave him like 3 more squirrels, and like he had 3 squirrels, 3 goblins, a bunch of Memnites, and the Haste Giver, and I was just like, damn, dude, his opening hand was like the perfect hand, and it was crazy. So I lose that game. So going to game 2, now obviously like my deck is a little different. It's not the same, but I definitely kept in the chalices because I wanted the chalice on 0 or 1. And then I think I went into something like this. Definitely sided in I think I went 6 cards. Oh, I think I did this also. So something like this. So reasoning behind well, let's ignore the chalice because I did play 2 chalice yesterday in my main deck. So I went for something like this. Main idea was Hollow Moonlights to just get rid of any of the goblins or squirrels that come in after he casts Chatterfang, or he casts the red spell that makes more goblins. Same thing with Aether Gust. Aether Gust is just trying to hit those cards, or hit his permanent on the board where he tries to pop an artifact, because all the artifacts that he plays were like the red artifact 1/1s. I don't remember the name of it, but I wanted to try to get rid of those targets so he couldn't barf out more goblins. And then Kai's Guile is just to literally heal and save, just restore my life. And Kyle's Guile won me, I think, both the games actually. Like, this thing saved me a bit. So one, I go first. Nothing really eventful happens, but like he goes for the goblin plays. He has like 3 goblins. I go Guy's Guile, force him to sacrifice 1 and block a goblin. So that was able to kind of just stall the game out long enough for me to start establishing control of the board. And he was just basically trying to barf out as many creatures as he could. I was able to, I think, dam one of his board. So like overload, dam his board, wiped it. And then he tried to barf out more goblins, and I just tried to get rid of as many goblins and squirrels as I could. And eventually I was able to get a lot of mana. I think I had like 7 lands, a Snapcaster on the board, and I had a Hall of the Storm Giant. I started to animate the Storm Giant, and I was able to finish him in 2 turns or so. I also had the Emperor. The Emperor also came in, so the game direction kind of flipped to me being the aggro player now, because after me just kind of getting rid of his board, and then I started establishing threats on my end, and then I was able to kill him in 2 turns. So I didn't want the game to keep going on, because I was like maybe 9 to 8 health. So I was low, and I was just trying to keep myself alive, because I was afraid maybe he also had Burn Spell, but I also was able to Chalice on 1, I believe. So that sort of like bought me some additional time early in the game when I Chalice on 1. So that was kind of nice. So that was game 2. Game 3, he gets a pretty good hand, I would say. The only issue with his hand is that he only had 1 land, and I didn't really realize that until I was on my 3rd land. I was like, oh, he's still like on 1 land, but even on 1 land, he was pumping out goblins and squirrels like insanely quick, and I was pretty low on life. I had to. I think by turn 3 he had like 6 goblins on the board, or like 6 whatever. So I go Kai's Guile. I create a 1/1 and heal 4. I think he has seven creatures. He swung seven at me. I Kai's Guile healed four, so with that seventh creature, I only took 2 damage, so that was really nice. And then the turn after that, I was able to get another land, play Supreme Verdict, and blow up his board. He goes, he plays more, makes a bunch more. I go, I think I was able to dam it or something like that and get rid of his board again. Keep in mind, he's still only on one land. I think if he drew a second land, I think I might have died a little bit quicker. But either way, it goes back after a while. He does draw his additional land, starts playing more. But at this time, he kind of misses window of opportunity of killing me, just because he was stuck on one land, sort of. And I was able to sort of establish control, get out blockers, get out, um, you know, uh, solitudes and things like that. I was able to essentially stabilize, and so he sort of missed his opportunity to kill me. And yeah, from there, I think that was the game basically. Just me, he was able to put on a few threats onto the board, but none of the threats were enough to deal with my threats, which I had, big Teferi. I had the Emperor or maybe a Solitude on the board. It's good enough to deal with his 1/1s. So the game went to me turn three or uh, game three of that particular round. So yeah, and then round two I played against um, Izzet Fires deck. It's a combo extra turn sort of deck with like Days Undoing, Fires, um, and whatnot. And so um, I was just able to kind of remove all of his value engines and kind of. I think he drew too many fires. He kept playing fires and more fires. And he was a friend, so he was kind of telling me what to play, how to play against him. So I mean, going into blind, I probably would have like dealt with tried to deal with the fires more. But he was like, oh, I already have a bunch of fires. Don't even bother removing the fires of invention anymore. Hit his other stuff, so that's what I did, and kind of sort of won both games that way. Game two, I think I established a Teferi, and then sort of baby Teferi, and sort of just took control from there. Yeah, obviously, I think his combo deck just has a harder time against a control deck. That's just the nature of a combo deck, right? You need to be able to do your combo without being interacted with. But my deck had a lot of interaction, so good matchup for me, bad matchup for him. I'm not gonna really like delve too much into that particular matchup. But yeah, matchup three was where, or round three was where I had my first experience with the new version of Elementals. Now I don't know if this is the current staple list or not, but his version, he was playing Karuga, the Hippo. So knowing that, it means he has no CMC 1 or 2 cards in his deck. So I expect he has like no counter spells, no Flusterstorm, none of that stuff. No Spell Pierces, no Ren and Six. But he did have like cards like Fire and Ice and whatnot. So game one, it was going okay for me, but I think I misplayed at a critical point because I had the Emperor on the board. And I think he slaps down a Teferi, which I had to Leyline Binding, and I think I might have chosen the wrong target. I chose to hit one of his Risen Reef rather than the Solitude on the board, which then he used the Teferi to kill my token out of the board, and then ran my Emperor over with the Solitude. So I think that's how I messed up there, and that sort of swung the game in his favor. And so yeah. But the most annoying part about the deck is just the Fable passage. It just trying to deal with Fable while also dealing with his other value engines like Nissa. Nissa was pretty cool to see. I heard about Nissa. I dealt with Nissa as much as possible. For example, when he plays Nissa, he plays a land and tries to crack it. I respond to the crack before the second land gets onto the board, kill Nissa. So Nissa never really popped off, but Nissa is one of those cards that I have to answer. If I don't answer Nissa, then the game is just that over that much quicker. If he gets out Solitudes, he gets out Fury, we're done. Like there's not much I can do. So like every time Nissa hit the board, I had to make sure he didn't like have like double fetches just sitting there waiting, or had a fetch and played another fetch from hand. So yeah, it's just one of those like cards that's like, wow, this card is actually pretty good. Like it's better than Reef for sure. It's better stats. Granted, Risen Reef has more synergy with the deck. It's just like landfall abilities is just valued without having to really try. And so I think I think Nissa's a lot better than Risen Reef because with Nissa on the board, you're always playing lands every turn anyways, so you're always going to trigger Nissa more likely than not because you go Nissa fetch land fetch that triggers Nissa already. Where like Risen Reef, you need to go Risen Reef, play like another Risen Reef, or you need to like invoke a elemental. In his case, he was playing all three, or he was playing both Nissa and Risen Reef, and Fable. So all three of those cards sort of made it really hard for me to establish control of the board when I have to keep dealing with all his like small threats, and then he also like slaps out like a Baby Teferi. He also brings out Omnath, Solitude, and Fury, which were all sort of hard to deal with all at the same time. And I think that's how I sort of got snowballed there, just dealing with the small stuff and then losing to the bigger stuff, I guess. And yeah, that was sort of a rough matchup there. Game two kind of went the same way. Um, early in the game, like I was able to like get controlled and be fine. Well, I guess game two, I did I did he did something where I wasn't expecting. So I go enter an Archmage Charm. He goes Mystical Dispute. I was like, oh, okay, so he does have a counter. So I lose the Archmage Charm. My turn again. I try to go to Fairy. He had one open blue mana and a forest. I was like, okay, all right. Well, what are the odds? He doesn't have a counter spell. He can't really counter me, right? I play it, and he has another Mystical Dispute, which then I think that kind of sealed the game right there. Is just having two Mystical Dispute, me seeing his land. Like, all right, he might be able to counter me one time, but he won't be able to counter me twice. But he had double Dispute with two blue lands, and I happened to cast two blue spells, and I just lost Temple from there. So, I guess I should have read that one better. That was on me. But yeah, for as to why I sided in, I took out the Chalice because he was playing Karuga, so for sure he didn't have any 1 mana, 2 mana spells or 0 mana spells that were carrying. But I did put in Sullies because that would have been good, and then I think I went something like Aethergust, and that was probably it in terms of the siding against them. Um, but yeah, it was a hard matchup. I don't think there was anything. I mean, I know there's a few plays I could have done that was better, for sure. But just the constant value engine, like I was speaking earlier in this video about creativity and elementals, their gameplay loop is always the same. It's always get a bunch of value early in the beginning with cards like Fable, Mirror Breaker, um, Fable Mirror Breaker. They're expressive. They're playing expressive, or just establishing a bunch of like seemingly harmless permanents, and then they just generate a ton of value. And then me as a control player have to deal with those types of permanents, which is really hard. Like enchantments, artifacts, or sort of, or like my deck's not designed to sort of deal with that sort of permanents. I'm more designed towards dealing with creatures. If they're not really establishing too many creatures, they're establishing a bunch of value creatures that are like free, I guess. Like the Goblin token that Fable makes is free, or creatures that already pay for themselves on entering battlefield, like maybe a Nissa or even like a Risen Reef. My removal becomes a lot worse, a lot less valuable, and that's just kind of hard to play through. And I don't know, like if you guys had any ideas as to what other cards you could put in, like yeah, I guess you can try to counter it before it comes in, but like even then, um, from my experience, countering one of those things is great, but they have like an entire hand full of cards that basically just generate value after like value, And so like yeah, you can counter one, maybe two, but when their entire deck is just like that, and you only have so many answers to so many of their questions that they put out, it becomes sort of one of those like gameplay loops where I just don't particularly want to have to always deal with. Um, and that's just the inherent weakness of playing control is just our decks are full of answers. It's just we don't always have the right answers. We don't always have the best answers to all the questions that they're putting out, and that sort of feels bad, honestly. And I think that's sort of the direction of where current modern is, and even pioneer, and even standard, where the cards they put out are they generate so much value, but all the cards that you have to answer those value cards are just as like worse, no matter what. Like for example, they play a Fable Passage. Yes, you can prismatic ending the Fable, or you can prismatic ending the Goblin, but they're up a card still because they still have the Goblin, or they still have the Fable that you still have to deal with, and you just basically by answering their cards, you get punished for doing that, which I guess doesn't feel all that great. Or if you're playing against creativity, they throw out a bunch of treasure tokens, and you try to answer those treasure tokens or those crabs or whatever, and it's like those are just free cards, but you're spending resources to try to answer free cards, and you know you get rid of that, and they in their hand they just have more copies of it, so it gets really really frustrating to deal with when you see that all the time. It's like get rid of one crab, next turn and play like two more crabs, and it's like oh my god, like I just don't really want to sit through this. Where in like a regular matchup where something you're playing is like Yawgmoth or um, Murktide, when you kill one thing, it's permanently gone. Like you kill a monkey, it's gone. The monkey doesn't like make another body, or the monkey doesn't do something. Yeah, if the monkey dashes and hits you, it generates the additional value, which is why monkey is kind of really really good. But if they hard cast a monkey for 1 mana and then you fatal push it, when it dies, it dies. It doesn't really do anything else. It's when obviously you leave it alone. That's when it gets out of control. And I feel like a lot of the cards that they're currently designing um, are going towards that direction where 1-for-1 removal just feels bad playing against those type of cards where those cards already have already gotten their value or will just generate more value. Like cards like Archmage's Charm, Shadow Prophecy is like yeah, it's a +1 for you, but it doesn't really hurt your opponent. Where like your opponent plays a Fable Passage for 3 mana, and now you have to spend a card killing it, and then you have to hopefully have another card to kill their other Hikijiki when it flips, for example. So it's just like yeah, it's rough. We don't really have any good answers to those cards yet, and I think that's kind of like a problem there. We don't have something that is maybe like a Prismari command for enchantments. Maybe you deal 2 damage and then you pop a enchantment or something like that. Then okay, maybe if you had answers like that, then it wouldn't be so bad. But the fact that is like as control, like you can Solitude, you can cast Solitude, invoke Solitude, minus yourself 1, hit a goblin or hit their Hikijiki, and then you're down like 3 cards, and it's not really sustainable as a control player when card advantage is supposed to be your strong point, but you're actually down on cards because all of your answers are just not that great against their board. So yeah, that's kind of like my thought on the current state of Modern, where you just have a lot of bad answers. If you're playing a more progress or more proactive deck, like obviously Murktide or Yawgmoth or something that's you are the one that's putting out threats, then the format probably doesn't feel as bad. But you're playing a reactive deck like I am, blue white control or any variant of control, then the format it just doesn't feel as great, for sure. Unless we get something broken like Force of Will, or we get like mana drain or something crazy like that, then control might feel really good. But right now, because all of our answers are just not that great, you know, we, we've taken a ton of directions on building the deck. To the fact that at one point, Chalice of the Void was required to be played in the main just so you can answer all the one drops that your opponent's pumping out every turn. And our counters and our answers are just overly costed. Well, their questions are just super undercosted. Like they cast Monkey, it's just one mana, and it's just if you don't deal with it, you're gonna lose, right? Where all of our answers are just not that great, and that's just kind of sort of unfortunate um, thing there. Like our best card so far has been like Leyline Binding, which it's okay. Like I sometimes love and hate it. It requires it punishes us punishes control because now you have to build a rainbow mana base just to support this card, and then our mana base is already kind of like bad anyways. Because you gotta play like 25, 24 lands, and then now you're playing these tap lands that make your deck slower, and so it's just one of those things where we have to find good answers, but the good cards like Lane Binding requires us to sort of um, kind of make bad deck builds or bad bad mana base, bad choices. Like if you're playing Chalice the Void, you can't play any one mana spells. You're playing Binding, you gotta play Rainbow Mana, and you lose to Blood Moon. Things like that. It's tough. It's definitely tough. But I mean, that's enough of me complaining about the current state of Modern. I'm hoping with the new Lord of the Rings set comes out, it does change up the meta a little bit to make it a little bit less stale, a little less repetitive. But that remains to be seen. But hopefully, I'll have more time to go out and play a little bit more and continue the series because I still enjoy playing Magic for sure. I just haven't enjoyed this format that much. Maybe I'll go into Pioneer, but I haven't really finished my Pioneer deck all that much either. So it's gonna be a while before getting to Pioneer. Anyways, guys, that's enough of me rambling. I know this video's about 40 minutes now. Anywho, I'll see you guys next time. Hopefully really soon. And then yeah, thanks you guys for watching and stay tuned.